I've done group trips, I've done solo trips. I've done independent trips with travel companions. Spoiler alert, there is no right or wrong way to do it. Most of the time I travel independently, but some of the best travel memories I have were from group travel experiences. I'm also considering a specific destination for later this year that I'll probably do with a group for reasons that I'll explore in this episode. Today we are talking about the pros and cons of group travel, so you can make the best decision for your next trip. Let's do this. Our guide through this exploration is a viewer of this channel named Suzanne. Suzanne, at 69 years young, has a lot of travel experiences from around the world. She even lived abroad for 2 years with the Peace Corps in Albania. For much of her life, Suzanne was the quintessential independent traveler. She loved to plan the perfect itinerary, while also embracing the flexibility of the road and making decisions on the fly and soaking in the world at her own pace. She often did these trips with her husband or her daughter or her friends. However, life's turns, including a divorce, brought Suzanne to a crossroads. She found herself wondering if she was really ready to embark on major solo journeys. While she had no trouble planning and executing an amazing trip, she always had somebody to travel with. But her self-image also bristled at the thought of group tours. The idea of boarding buses with strangers, following a flag through crowded streets, did not fit her vision of travel. But when a friend asked, had she ever actually tried a group tour, she realized she hadn't. So she used it as an opportunity to challenge her preconceptions. So in the summer of 2022, she took a leap into the world of organized tours. She started with a Road Scholar trip in Canada. Road Scholar is known for their sterling reputation, educational focus, and small group sizes. Went pretty well. Well enough that she did another Road Scholar trip in another part of Canada. Then when she was planning a trip to Italy, she went with another tour company called Odysseys Unlimited, because it also has a good reputation and they have some longer trip options. I have no affiliation with any of these companies, and I'm only mentioning them here for context. Each trip she took, with its unique set of experiences, led Suzanne to a deeper understanding of the nuances of group travel, good, bad, and otherwise. She had unforgettable experiences with these trips that she wouldn't otherwise have had, but there were also some compromises to be made. Now, obviously, since Suzanne did more than one group trip, on the whole, she had a positive experience. But she also extensively shared with me what she learned about the pros and cons of group tours versus solo travel, so that she can help me help you make the right choices for your next trip. So let's get into it. We'll start with the pros of group trips. Although most of my travel experience has been independent or solo travel, I have done a few group travel experiences. The most memorable by far was an expedition cruise that I did with Adventure Canada around Newfoundland. There was so much that I loved about the trip, not the least of which was the access to information and experiences that I couldn't possibly have had on my own. If you're interested in seeing what that trip was like, I have an episode all about it. Although travel vlogs are a ton of work, which is why I don't tend to do them anymore, I will admit I do like having this particular video as a record of this epic travel experience. I'll leave a link in the description and the first comment if you would like to vicariously travel with me. I think half the battle is choosing a group trip that suits your travel personality and goals. So once I've gone through the pros and cons of group travel, I'll give you some specific criteria that will help you make the best choices for your next trip, so you can choose the best tour provider for your needs, or no tour provider at all. Without a doubt, there is huge value to be gotten from not having to worry about logistics when you travel with a group. These benefits start long before you take the trip, since you don't need to worry about detailed itinerary planning and booking stuff. Suzanne said on her first 2 group trips in Canada, she really appreciated all the logistics being handled, so she could simply enjoy the experience without the stress of planning. But this really leveled up when she was in Italy. Transportation workers called a general strike on the last day of their trip when they were all supposed to leave. The tour company took care of all the logistics required to reaccommodate everybody, and they picked up the tab for any extra expenses. None of the group participants had to spend their time handling this situation. And when you're in a foreign country, sometimes dealing with language or cultural barriers, assistance like this can be a significant benefit. There's also safety in numbers. You're less likely to be targeted for theft or scams or pickpocketing if you're in a group. This can be particularly comforting if you're in an unfamiliar or particularly challenging destination to travel through. Not only that, but group leaders are often well-versed in handling unexpected situations, which can be reassuring. With group trips, you can get access to experiences not available to individual travelers. Suzanne mentioned that in all the trips she did, she never had to wait in lineups to get into places. They pre-booked with specific entry times and could waltz right in. She was also pleasantly surprised by the exclusive experiences she had, like meeting the organist of Montreal's main cathedral and attending a Quebecois music and dancing demonstration, which she couldn't have arranged on her own. Along with unique access and meeting people on group trips who you wouldn't otherwise be able to meet is a unique level of learning. Some group trips have a deeper focus on education than others. On my Adventure Canada cruise, our guides were locals who all had a deep speciality that brought a unique level of depth to our experience, be it cultural, musical, culinary, geological, and beyond. Suzanne recalls a tour that she did through the Grand Canyon, which included a half-day trip to the bottom of the canyon. Their guide was an ethnobotanist who taught them all about the Hualapai Indians and their use of native plants and foods. This is something she wouldn't have been able to do on her own. She also mentioned that not only were the knowledgeable guides valuable, but her fellow travelers also asked really thoughtful questions that significantly enhanced her travel experiences. Speaking of fellow travelers, sharing the experience of discovering a new destination alongside other people is a recipe for friendship. You all booked this trip for a reason, which means you're generally like-minded and share some commonalities that you can explore together as you explore your destination. These connections can lead to lasting friendships beyond the trip. Suzanne is regularly in touch with several folks from the trips that she's done. They've met up a few times, and they regularly share travel information and recommendations by email. Not all group tours are created equal. This is something that I will explore a bit deeper in a minute, by the way. But this is a pro because it means that you can choose a tour that suits your fitness level, activity preferences, and styles of exploration. Suzanne discovered an activity level rating system when she was researching the Rhodes Scholar Tours, and this allowed her to specifically choose a trip that matched her preference for active walking, which of course enhanced her overall enjoyment of the trip. Activity levels and themes are a common way to filter your searches with many tour companies so that you can find the perfect experience for you. While the common sentiment about group tours is that they're more expensive than independent travel, that's not always the case. The shared cost of transportation, guides, and accommodations can make certain destinations more accessible. Suzanne broke down the cost of one of her group tours and found that it would have cost the same for her to do it independently. And if you subscribe to the idea that time is money, you might also assign some value to outsourcing all of the logistics when you book that group trip. Rounding out the pros of group travel is a really interesting point that Suzanne made about doing things that she wouldn't normally do, and being pleasantly surprised by the results. On a group trip to Banff, Alberta, one of the activities was a gondola ride to the summit of a mountain. She wouldn't have done this on her own, since she figured it was too touristy and it was really expensive. But she loved it. They had lots of time to explore at the summit, and it ended up being one of her favorite things from that trip. On another trip in Canada, her tour group visited the Governor General's residence in Quebec. She was unenthusiastic about it at first, since she thought it was just going to be a tour of a historical home. But as it turns out, the home itself was merely the venue for an in-depth discussion of the Canadian government and how it works, which she found fascinating. I also found this to be the case on some of the excursions I had on my expedition cruise. I was going to give a tour of a historical home in Newfoundland a miss, but I'm glad I went because what I learned about Newfoundland culture and mentality informed the entire rest of my trip. I wrote about this pretty extensively on my website, so I'll leave a link in the description if you'd like to read about it. Now, with the good comes the bad. And it's up to you whether the pros of group travel will outweigh the cons. This is something that I would evaluate on a trip-by-trip basis as well. Depending on what it is that you want to do and where, the group experience may be better or worse than an independent one. The dreaded single supplement is the bane of every solo traveler's existence. Most of the time when you see a quote for a tour or a cruise, it's based on double occupancy. So for the solo traveler who wants their own room, you can face additional charges of up to 35% or more. If you're a solo traveler who wants to join a group trip, then look for companies that waive the single supplement. Some companies have a certain availability of solo spots for this purpose, or they may offer special limited time sales. Beware though, most group trips limit the number of solo travelers who can book, or they limit the number of spots that waive the single supplement fee. This often means solo travelers need to book many months in advance in order to claim these coveted spots. Suzanne just left on another group trip to the Baltics that she had to book a full year in advance. I'd like to give a shout out to my friends at Solo Traveler who have a page of group tours especially for solo travelers that have discounted or eliminated the single supplement. I'll leave a link in the description and the first comment. I also have an episode on this channel interviewing Janice Waugh, who is the founder of Solo Traveler, and we talk all about solo travel over the age of 50. If you don't want to shell out for the single supplement and you're a solo traveler, you might be given an option to share a room. This may or may not float your boat. In addition, group tours often have packed itineraries that leave little room for relaxation or leisure, which can be a drawback if you're looking to unwind. Now, this varies by trip, so be sure to check the itinerary before you book so you can see how much time is built into the schedule for independent exploration. I think group trips are great for solo travelers because you get to travel and explore with like-minded people. But ironically, when faced with single supplements or shared rooms, solo travelers might not be as likely to book. Suzanne found this to be the case on her trip to Italy, where there was only one other solo traveler. And they didn't really click, so they didn't spend much time together. This left Suzanne to socialize with the couples who were on the trip, which happened to a certain extent, but couples often keep to themselves, and she didn't want to be intrusive. This leads to a general point about group dynamics, which might not always be the best. Clashing personalities or differing interests can affect the overall experience. Many years ago, I visited a safari camp in South Africa with a friend. Eating meals and going on safaris with the same group of people every day was a colorful experience, to say the least. Let's just say we didn't all see eye to eye on a few topics. In my case, it was more amusing than upsetting, but personality clashes can happen. Related to that can be the somewhat superficial experience that some group tours offer. Some trips may only focus on popular tourist spots without diving deep into the local culture or off-the-beaten-path experiences. You can usually figure this out pretty easily before booking the trip, so it's more about finding the right tour for you rather than this being a drawback of all group trips. This also extends to the mentality of fellow participants. Suzanne said that on one of her trips, about half the participants were people who collect national parks, and they were less interested in the educational component of the trip. She said these people were also less interested in and less welcoming towards others on the trip. This cultural surface skimming is directly related to the pace of the trip. In order to maximize value for participants, many tours will pack in as many activities as possible. It stands to reason, if you've only got a week or two at your destination, you'll have to move fast in order to cover the hotspots. And it's hard to please everybody. Some people may find it too slow and oriented towards more leisurely activities, while other people might find it too fast, preferring more time to explore each site. This also leads to a lack of control. If you have to be up at 5 a.m. for that day's departure to wherever, you gotta be up at 5 a.m. And there's nothing worse than keeping an entire group waiting, so punctuality is also very important on group trips. All of this leads to the con of your time not quite being your own when you travel on a group trip. Although tour providers are cognizant of needing to provide personal exploration time, it can't happen everywhere or all the time. Suzanne gave an example of a very special experience she had while traveling independently with her daughter through Iceland. While they were driving, they came upon some Icelandic horses and stopped to see them. Now, on a tour, they would only have just seen them out the window as they whizzed by. If you thrive on calling the shots all the time, you might find the structure of a group trip to be a bit claustrophobic. Pro for pro and con for con, this evaluation of group trips is actually a draw. While some pros or cons might hold greater weight for you in terms of priorities, I've just outlined 8 of each. So here are 9 final considerations, neither pros nor cons, but definitely stuff to consider in deciding what kind of trip works best for you. This is important because not all tours are created equal. Tour companies will offer a wide range of options catering to different demographics and interests. So ultimately the onus is on you to choose a company that best aligns with your travel style and your preferences. Here are a few things to think about. Many group trips move fast. They cover a lot of destinations and you're changing hotel rooms frequently. Some people like this ability to cover a lot of territory, while others find it exhausting. If you know what your preferences are, you can find the right group trip for you. One of the reasons why Suzanne chose one of the trips that she did was that they stayed for 3 nights in each place rather than moving every night. Clarify what you want to get out of your trip. Are you looking for relaxation, adventure, education, or social interaction? Do you prefer historical sites, or urban landscapes, or natural wonders? Your goals can significantly influence whether group travel or independent travel suits you better. And if you want to take a group trip, these goals will help you choose the best company. If you're a novice traveler, group tours can provide a comforting structure and security as you get used to navigating new environments. Even if you're an experienced traveler, you might find yourself visiting a place where you value having the logistics taken care of, or the security of being in a group, or perhaps the additional access that you might get to sites and activities that you wouldn't be able to do independently. I'm looking at going to Tanzania later this year. I'm fully capable of doing a trip like this independently, but the group that I'm thinking of going with has inside access to some pretty cool experiences and the ability to coordinate some significant excursions. And in a group, I won't have to worry about personal security as much as I would have to on my own. I have a friend who values independent travel, and specifically solo travel, because it allows him to engage with his environment better, which includes meeting local people along the way. But there's also value to the shared experience of visiting a new place with other people. Your combined perspectives can create a fuller picture of the place. Suzanne experienced this when she found her fellow tripmates asking questions that she hadn't considered asking. Budget-wise, I honestly think it's a wash and is highly dependent on the destination and your travel preferences. Group travel can get you discounted accommodation and admission tickets, but you may also face extra fees like single supplements and tips. I've said it before, but it's worth repeating. Not all tour operators are created equal. Look for companies that align with your travel style, your ethical considerations, and have good reviews for the destinations that you're interested in. Pay attention to what's included in the price and the size of the group. Suzanne says there are often Facebook groups where people trade intelligence on tours and provide information on their interactions with the tour operator, including how the company handled snafus. For example, she belongs to the Friends of Rhodes Scholar and other similar Facebook groups specific to individual tour companies, as well as a few Facebook groups for women travelers age 60 plus, who trade all sorts of information about tours. I'll leave some links to these groups in the description if that interests you. Decide how much flexibility you want during your trip. Group tours have predefined itineraries that might not align with your interests or your preferred pace. If having the freedom to explore is important to you, consider tours that offer ample free time or look into independent travel options. Consider the environmental and cultural impact of your travel. Group tours can vary greatly in their sustainability practices. If this is important to you, seek out companies that prioritize responsible travel. If you're unsure about group travel, consider trying a short group tour as a test before committing to a longer itinerary. This can give you a sense of whether this style of travel meets your needs and enjoyment. One last important consideration that Suzanne mentioned to me is travel insurance. Some tour companies offer it and others don't. Their different approaches also get intertwined with their refund and credit policies for canceled trips. For example, Suzanne mentioned that her immediate family is her 2 closest friends. If one of them were to fall ill or die, most insurance policies wouldn't cover that as a legitimate reason for cancellation because they're not blood relatives. As a result, Suzanne sometimes buys insurance from an independent provider in order to get cancel for any reason coverage. If you want to know more about travel insurance, including a guest appearance from some friends of mine who were on a group trip when one of them broke his back, then definitely check out this episode next. I'm Nora Dunn, aka The Professional Hobo, and thank you for watching.